Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the stream. And we're back with more RPG game development. Welcome, welcome. So, yesterday, I said at the end of the stream that I was going to do a unit test, a full unit test, and make sure everything was working. And it turned out that not everything's working because one of our tests failed. The actual new one we made, the monster mana recovery test. So today we're going to look into that before we start on or continue the monster spellcasting system. But anyways, welcome everyone. Let's get started. So why did this occur? Well, I have a hunch that it occurred because our test monster decided it was going to try to cast a spell, and it doesn't have the casting animation. So we're actually in debug mode right now. I don't know if it's running. I don't actually think it's running, so I'm just going to kill this. I think it finished running and then it errored out, right? So if I were to go to our log, which is found in x64 unit testing debug.log, and we open that up and just take a look at the last few lines that we're running. Let's see here. It doesn't look like it tells us anything about the error, so it probably just errored out, or the game just crashed, right? So that's what we're going to be looking at. There are two ways we can go about this. We either assign a casting animation to this monster, or we prevent them from casting in the first place because they don't even have a casting animation, and we just made up the ability for the sake of making it up, right? If I set the probability of this attack going off to 0%, then it should not actually cause it to go off during testing. And I would have to do the same for the Fire Mage, because it's entirely possible through testing, the code is just going to run on its own. It doesn't care if it's in testing mode or not. It might end up casting a spell. That's just how the game was built. So what I would like to do is I would like to go to the Fire Mage's abilities, which are located in the monster data, and I would like to update them to instead say Skeleton Fire Mage. And I'm going to go into the abilities vector, and I'm going to make it so that for each of these abilities, it's actually going to change them. So we're going to use a standard for each. And for the for each, we're going to look at abilities.begin and abilities.end. Like so. And then we end up with the ability information, which we're supposed to use or modify ourselves. So we're going to get monster ability data, and then we can actually modify this because it's going to be a reference. So we're going to say data dot percent cast chance. We're going to set to 0%. And we're just going to make a little comment here to annotate why we're doing this. While testing and running game updates, we do not want this ability to go off. So we set the cast percent chance to 0%. And with them set at 0%, there is no way that they could activate unless we roll a random number of 0, which I don't think is well, it might be possible. There's a chance, but we're gonna assume that's never gonna happen, which might be a poor assumption. But let's go ahead and run this now. It should no longer cause an ability cast. And then hopefully that test will now pass. So upon running it, we can see the test now passed, and that means every test from our last time we ran this are now passing. So we're good to go there. Yay! Just a small fix for tests. Let's go ahead and commit this to our repository real quick. Just a very, very quick little fix. Set the percent chance of casting abilities during mana recovery unit testing to never occur for monsters. And that is release build 12406. Great. So with that out of the way, now we're going to work on the actual abilities today. Yay! Yeah, so I was very excited about this because we're going to be taking some of the abilities we have already used in the past and just making them or repurposing them for the monsters instead. So let's start with the meteor here. Now, normally these are considered bullets, but I made it an effect, and it just makes it easier to manage because the effects allow me to draw something custom instead of just using the bullet drawing systems, which were a little more limiting, but could also be done either way. This is just how we did it. So inside of here, we can see that there are multiple different types of meteors, and they all are based on player-driven variables. So if we're going to make one for a monster, we're probably going to need to make a very special version specifically for monsters. So I'm going to call, this is going to be specifically for skeleton fire mages. So that's what I'm calling this meteor setting here, is skeleton fire mage. So we can go through and we can adjust pretty much any setting we want when it comes to these. Some I can keep the same, right? Like maybe I'll keep the particle colors the same. For now, we'll play with it, of course, but we can change the fall speed, we can change the size of the meteor. So we're gonna have to look at the spec, and the spec says it is a 300 range. So 300 range means it's 3 tiles large. So here we have meteor radius, which is normally determined by the player's meteor radius. So I'm going to change that now. You can see that we would take it, we would divide by 100, multiply by 24 times 2. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to write 300 in place of it. And that's what we're going to include for now. Now, we could put the setting inside of the Skeleton Fire Mage's configuration file. And that might actually be a good idea because then we can configure the size of the meteor from within there, and that might make things easier for us. So let me go ahead and open the Monster Strategies file, and we are going to make a Skeleton Fire Mage monster strategy. It doesn't even exist yet, so we're gonna have to do that too. But for now, Skeleton Fire Mage. is what we're going to call the strategy. And inside of here, let's go ahead and put meteor radius. Meteor radius is going to be set to 300 here. And then we have how much damage it does. So it's going to do 2 times damage, although that's going to be included when we define it. So we're going to define the damage in here. Meteor damage equals, we're going to do 2.0x. I guess we can put as a multiplier there, because the other abilities in the game are defined by multipliers. So it only makes sense that we also define this one as a multiplier. Then we have leaving a fire field for 4 seconds, dealing 30% attack for every second. So we have a fire ring lifetime, and the firing lifetime determines the lingering fire field. So we just write there what we want, of course, and then it deals a certain amount of damage per second. So here we can see that we have some damage multipliers. And so that's for that. What about the firing damage? Let's see. So meteor impact particles, we add an effect for pulsating fire. Where does the damage come from? I don't see where the damage comes from. So let's go inside of pulsating fire, which is its own effect added after the fact. And we're going to go straight to its implementation. And inside of here, we do see that, again, we have a lot of hard-coded things in here, including the firing damage frequency and how much damage it does. So, yeah, we can see here, that is the damage multiplier for it. It's the firing damage multiplier. So we're going to have to change this to make it work for monsters. And so there's a couple of ways we could do that. It's kind of interesting that we chose to do it this way, but we're going to need to bring in something that tells us this is specifically a skeleton fire mage pulsating firing. Because right now, it's only based on player stuff. So pulsating fire is going to need a new property to indicate that. Now, does it have a friendly flag? That's the question. If it has a friendly flag, we might be able to use that. But it does not. And I don't think meteors have it either. If we go back to Meteor, we can see that there is nothing related to, oh, this is not for a player, this is for an enemy. So because we have nothing to indicate it's for a monster, we are going to have to add a flag specifically for that. So back over here in Pulsating Fire, I'm going to go ahead and add in a, excuse me, back in, was it effect? Effect. Effect is located inside of effect.cpp. I don't know why it was not coming up, but in here, let's go to the pulsating fire. Looks like it's not popping up in here either. Oh, yeah, all the effects are not located in here. They're located... where was that file with all the definitions? Because that's what we need. I don't know where that went. I just had it, right? I'm not crazy. Okay, right here. This is inside of effect.header. Okay, so this is important. We're gonna need this. I'm gonna put it on a different screen for now. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a flag to indicate what this is. So I think the best way to describe it is whether it's for monsters or for players, right? Because if it's friendly, we know it's going to use that the player already configured stuff. But now, if it's a monster, we need to say that you are going to use something completely different. But then we're going to have to define the damage, where it comes from. So maybe we can do something similar to the meteor and define some kind of setting. That way we can hard code it, but at the same time, we know exactly why we're hard coding it. It's for the skeleton fire mages. So I think we're going to go that route instead. So we're going to have another meteor setting here. And meteor setting is defined in effect. So if we can grab that for the pulsating fire as well, we might be able to just match that. So first, I'm going to fill in the missing effect name here, skeleton fire mage. And then I'm going to go ahead and see if I can access it also from within a pulsating fire effect, because it should already be defined now. So let's try and use it for that. So I should be able to say meteor and then say, well, it is an enum, but it's also a class, or no, it's not a class. But I would be saying this is a meteor setting enum, and we can call this we'll just call this the setting, right? Simple enough. And so, yes, it looks like it allows us to do this, and then we're going to define that setting inside of the constructor. So we'll modify the constructor a little bit. This will be a const meteor setting. And inside of here, let's make a default value. We're just going to assume it is not skeleton fire mage, right? I think that's the best way to put it. And maybe meteor setting is the wrong move. Maybe we need a pulsating fire setting, because there are only 2 settings for pulsating fire. Pulsating fire setting. So maybe this is actually the correct move, and then we have whether it's player, because it doesn't change no matter which version of the meteor the player fires off. So we're left with player and skeleton fire mage as the only 2 options. So now if we go back to here and we change it to being a pulsating fire setting, now it makes more sense, and we can default it to being a player setting. And of course, in here, we're going to have to change this as well. Like that. Also, we can expect that it's going to remain const, because this is going to be set in the constructor, so that's not going to be an issue. This seems to be complaining about something, or is that IntelliSense being dumb? It looks like that's just IntelliSense being dumb. So we're going to take this now, go back up here, so it's not meteor setting anymore, now it's pulsating fire setting, and that's the default. So now what we're going to do is we're going to personally set the setting to whatever value we supplied. Oh no, this is meteor. Excuse me, wrong place. I do need this, but I need to do it in the pulsating fire, not in the meteor. So back in pulsating fire, we're going to be modifying the constructor here to match that one, and then setting the setting to setting. And now we have a way to define what kind of pulsating fire it is. Is it a player one, or is it a skeleton fire mage one? Where did this come from? That determines how we handle the damage. So I don't know if we're going to be changing the look of it. Again, depending on the particle coloring, we might have to modify it. But for now, we're just going to say, okay, last damage timer is hit, determine if you are player or not. We can add a switch statement here to determine that based on the setting. And this first one will be for the player. So we can say case player. And do that. And then we'll have another setting in order to specify this is for skeleton fire mages, which is going to hurt the player instead of hurting monsters. And it doesn't do anything for monsters, so monsters will not get hit by the skeleton fire mage specifically. So we can say that the sound effect will probably still play, at least for now. And we'll leave the firing damage frequency as is. It's supposed to be every second, so we'll probably change that momentarily. But this is also what we have to change, the firing damage multiplier. So we go back to the skeleton fire mage here, and we can add those in. So we'll have something like fire. We're adding in extra properties for the monster spell specifically. So the firing damage frequency is going to be every second. So I'm just going to put 1 second there. And then we have the firing damage multiplier. So the damage multiplier is going to be, I think it's 30%. So we're going to put 0.3. I'm also going to change the other variable to match in terms of calling it mult. So we have meteor damage mult, firing damage frequency, and firing damage, ooh, I put an extra E, damage mult. So now we're going to go back to here, and we're going to use those in place of this. So the way we access them is we're going to do monsters, at least I believe, oh no, this is monster strategies. So we go up here, and we can see monster strategy followed by the strategy name. So monster strategy dot skeleton fire mage is how we would access these variables from within here. So monster strategy dot skeleton fire mage, and then the name of the variable. So in our case, this is going to, oh, I put this in the wrong spot though. Hold on. I did an oopsie again. I'm just too excited. I am just too excited. Okay. So we're back to that. And then fire ring damage frequency. Fire space ring space damage space frequency. Cool. So there's that one. And then we have the firing damage multiplier. Very similar. But we're going to substitute this in place of it. Like that. And then now we are going to go back. Oh, before we continue, before we go back, currently we're doing game hurt. We need to decide what we're hurting. So the hurt targets. Right now, the hurt targets would be, I believe, monsters. So we're going to change that so that the hurt targets that are detected are now players. There's only one player, but that is how this function works. It's a hurt range function. So now that we've made it so skeleton fire mages have their own settings for the pulsating fire, I believe now it's time to go back and work on the meteor and use those settings as well, because we have access to them. So the new skeleton fire mage case here, again, the damage multiplier is going to come from this variable, or a similar variable to this. So damage multiplier is meteor space damage mult. And then we can see here it's also multiplied by a damage reduction %. That comes from the ability, one of the enchantments in the game. So this isn't affected by an enchantment. It's for monsters, and monsters do not have enchantments. So we can ignore that one. And then we have the fire ring lifetime. So that's not a variable yet, but we can add one. Let's look at the spec again. The spec says that a meteor lasts for, or a fire field from a meteor lasts for 4 seconds. So that would be the fire ring lifetime is going to be 4 seconds long. Make sure I don't typo that. And then we can go back here, and now we can substitute that in place of the player's wizard config. So it will be like this. And then the crash sound effect, we'll keep the same for now. So now we mostly have that set up, at least for setting up the meteor, but we still are hurting only monsters right now because we assume this is only a player thing. So we're gonna have to change that now. I'll leave the meteor impact particles as they are, and I'm only going to change the hurt and the pulsating fire sections of the code to indicate that they are going to be doing something very different. So by default, we're going to put all the player settings in one batch, and then we're going to make another batch specifically for the skeleton fire mage. So we're looking at the setting again. I don't know why this is undefined. That's a little strange. Oh, the setting doesn't get stored in the meteor. We just read it on the constructor. So we need to actually store that if we want it to be available to us later. So let's go back to the effect header, and we're going to add that as a property now to the meteor, because we need to access it more than just on creation. So we'll add a setting variable, and then we'll make sure the setting variable also gets set in the constructor. And now we have access to that. So we can go back down here, and setting is now available in the update function. And we're going to say, for at least these 4 cases, we could even say the default case, which is the player case, right? So I'm going to do something interesting here, and I'm going to define default to be player only for, or excuse me, I'm going to define player as default only for this section. And the reason why I'm doing this is because it makes it more, in this case, having a custom define is more clear of what our intention is. If we just say default, it's like, well, that's every case, but that doesn't really tell us exactly what we want. Now, we could do default, and originally I was going to say player cases, but I'll be honest, also this is covered up, I apologize. I don't read my code comments super often when I'm just going through and actually creating code. So I'm afraid that if I put a comment here mentioning this is for all the player cases, it's a little ambiguous. If instead I put player here, all of a sudden I've captured my attention. I'm like, wait a second, why is there player here? That doesn't really make sense, right? Like, this isn't even C++, like regular C++. Why is player there? And since that will grab my eye and attention, I will focus on it more and realize what I was trying to do there. So this is one of the rare cases where I would actually use some kind of define like that to make it just a little more special. And it's for every player case that's not handled, because they're all going to be the same. And the reason why I was originally going to say, okay, case meteor under there, case comet under there, case solar flare under there, case comet flare. At first I was going to do that, but then I realized, what if we have more later? Then I have to remember to add it here, and I have to remember to add it down there. And if I'm going to have to remember to add it in multiple places, that's just room for more problems, more errors, right? So this is more of an eye catcher. And I would say default cases, I can put that in the comment just to clarify. This is what I was originally thinking. Default cases are player cases. Handle all other enemy cases in their own statements. Ta-da! So yeah, this is a very, very special case. It's a little crowded in the switch statement. It's not clear that this is a switch statement right now because it's got a bunch of extra stuff in it. So I think I'm switching it to this. This probably looks a little bit better. And now we can implement specifically what happens when the skeleton fire mage when the meteor hits the ground. So I'm going to make it clear that this is like the actual part where we crash. So on meteor hit ground, that's what all this code is for. So I just want to make that clear by putting a little label up there too. It's kind of weird. It's a little uncommon to just use go-to labels to label things, but they are labels, and after all, you can use it for those kinds of things. Okay, so skeleton fire mage. We're going to do these two things, but a little different, right? So firstly, we changed the constructor for a pulsating fire to now indicate what the actual setting is for it. So we're going to say the setting is player. So I will write out, how does it know what this is? It doesn't. This is going to be pulsating fire, : player. I'm worried that this will conflict with my macro. I hope not. Ugh. That's what I was afraid of. And unfortunately, that means we have to either define this as something else or define that as something else. I think I'm just going to put case... I think I will call this something more specific, right? Let's call this player _ cases. I think that will make it very clear that even the name describes what this macro actually does. So I've decided to do that there. And then now that doesn't conflict with the pulsating fire : player define. And then from here, we're going to go back to the other one and call this the skeleton fire mage setting for pulsating fire. And we're also not hurting monsters when it's the skeleton fire mage shooting out a meteor, but we're hurting any players. Also, the hurt flag will not be considered a player ability anymore because it's a monster, so it's not going to be from a player ability. So with all those things in check, I think we're in a good spot to actually have a meteor attack come from a monster. There's just a few more things I want to do before we actually test this. First, if we're going to test these abilities, we want to make it clear that this system is actually working as intended. And I could unit test them. We'll eventually write unit tests to make sure monster ability casting does work. But for now, we need to address or pretend we're casting things even if there's nothing there yet. So first we have to go to monster ability.cpp, which is what we created yesterday. So here are the lambda functions for our monster ability casts. This is what's going to run whenever we cast the ability. So for the fireball right now, we don't have anything happening. So I'm actually going to do a standard print line, or not print line, but I will do a log, and that log will be a message output that just tells us that a firebolt has been shot out. So firebolt has been casted. And I can even take this one step further, and I can include a standard format here and say spell name has been casted by monster, whatever the monster name, at position. Boom. Just like that. Or I can say with cast position, because that might imply the monster position, which is not quite accurate. So we're gonna fill those in. So spell name has been casted by monster M. This is a weak pointer, so we have to lock it. We're looking for the display name of the monster. Now we're going to have to include monster.h here because this file doesn't know anything about monsters. So we'll do that. And now we can do get display name, which will make it show up there. And then it's at cast position, pause.string. We have to always convert our vectors into a string form that gets output and displayed. So this is what we're going to use as like a placeholder cast. This makes it so at least we know that the ability would have been casted at this moment. For the meteor, it's going to work a little different though, because we can actually create the meteor. So all we have to do is we're going to do create effect. At least I thought it was create effect, but it might be add effect. And that's probably going to come from game, which means I'm going to have to include it, which means I also will need to include Adventures in Listoria. So let's start with the include macro, include underscore game, which will give me access to that. And that pointer, we can't reference it right now because, again, we need Adventures in Listoria. And I think Adventures in Listoria will include monster.h. And if it does, then that takes care of both of those. So we're going to go to add effect. So add effect, we need to provide a foreground and potentially a background effect. So in this case, we're providing a foreground effect called Meteor. So we're going to have to do standard, make unique. Now, I think I have something that automatically does this for us. Let me again look for create effect. I think this actually exists and just saves us a little bit of typing and work. I don't think I'm crazy to say this doesn't exist. So let's just search our project for create effect. That is OLC PEX gamepad, which is not what I'm looking for. I don't know why it's searched in here or ended up in here. Maybe it just does that if it can't find anything. Yeah, no more occurrences have been found. So that's unfortunate. Let me see any references to add effect. It looks like it's used pretty much everywhere, and it looks like that's how I'm gonna have to do it. So that's fine, I guess. I was just curious if maybe there was some other way we can get this done, but I guess not. So we're specifically going to need a meteor. And then we get access to all of its parameters. So the first one is the position, which is going to be the casting position. Then next we have the lifetime of the meteor. Which, I don't quite know if I need to specify one, because if I look here... Oh, the placement of the meteor or when it crashes, it depends on the lifetime. So let's see if the spec mentions anything about that. 300 range, 200% attack, leaving a fire field for 4 seconds. So I'm guessing you'll be like, meteor, cast, when the cast is done, the meteor will fall down. I guess it'll be pretty quick. Like, we don't want it to take too long. Maybe like 2 seconds or something. Meteor fall time is like 2 seconds, right? I don't know. That's interesting. But we're gonna go with that for now, which means we're gonna have to read that from the configuration itself, which is fine. We actually have the monster weak pointer here, so we can turn that into a reference if we want. We can get the reference of the monster by doing m.lock and then grabbing the reference from that lock. So it would be something like, because it's a shared pointer, so if we dereference the shared pointer, we get the object itself. So it would look something like that. And now that we have that as a reference, we can actually use the monster strategy helpers, such as config float. Although we don't have access to the strategy name yet, so we would have to include that too, which we can do. So let's try this little shortcut, I guess, if you want to call it. Because this could be literally any monster name, but specifically we want skeleton fire mage stuff. Like we're assuming it's a skeleton fire mage, but at the same time, I just don't want to have to type out specifically that it is from the skeleton fire mage configuration. So to fix that, we're going to have to go in and say include monster strategy helpers, and that gives us access to config float. Now config float needs the parameters, or the parameter name itself, and the strategy. So the parameters provided, we just need to provide a strategy as a string, which we can also do. Standard string. I don't know if we can pass it in as a string view, probably not. So we'll just say const standard string strategy. And that's going to be m get strategy. Why is it not using this m? I feel like it should be using that one. That's weird, right? Can I change this? I guess I could change it to monster. Specifically for the sake of making it easy to access this. Because apparently it doesn't want to work that way. So m strategy. Or like it gets confused and I'm not sure why. Like why should it get confused there? That doesn't make any sense, right? If I use m here like this, and then after that, then we have a new m. So this m should be from here, not here. My understanding of how that would work is kind of flawed. But now that I'm looking at it, maybe we can't define a variable that is already defined. That would probably be the compiler error there. So I guess this makes sense. I don't know how this happened. That's amusing. Go back to where you came from. Make unique meteor. And now we're back at config float, and we have to specify the actual config name. So this is going to be meteor fall time. So essentially what we have just done is made it so we have access to config float from inside of here. Identifier underscore get float is undefined. Really? It should not be, because this is monster strategy helpers.h, which defines... Oh, these aren't defined. Well, where did these come from? They come from runstrategy.cpp, which comes from monster strategy, which comes from monster. Or no, is it from defines? No way, it's not from defines, right? There is no way. There's no way. Yeah, so there's nothing there about that, so I'm not going crazy here. They are from monster indeed. So we define, or we include, the monster header file. I'm surprised monster is not included here already. That's a little bit weird, right? But like, if those are included by monster, why can't we just include monster in here? What's stopping us from doing that? Include monster. Does monster include something from there? Does monster include monster strategy helpers? That's the real question. It's like, is there some circular reference I'm missing here? Because I don't think so. Monster attribute does not need monster. Yeah, so why are we not just including monster inside of monster strategy helpers when it's essentially a requirement, right? That's the only way we have access to it. Yeah, so we have to include monster.h here in order to access it. And this is inside of monster strategy helpers.h, which I don't think any of these guys include. At least, I can't imagine any would. Let me do a quick search of that, because I'm skeptical, right? I want to be very careful about any circular references here. So we have one inside of monster.cpp, which makes sense. We have one in Pirate Captain, which also makes sense. There's one in Stone Golem. And this can keep going, I guess. Can we do like a find? Like a full find? View? View. Like, realistically, I want to do a find, right? Find. There's gotta be something here I can use. Is it, do we have, like, control? Oh, here we go. Okay, this is what I was looking for. This is, like, a find that is similar, but instead will show the results in here and a little more refined. So we can hit find all, and we can do it for our current project, and it would tell us every find. So I can pull this out. Sorry, this box is so weird. Okay. And then we can see them all from here without going crazy. I specifically am looking for any header files. So I don't immediately see any. CPP, they are all source C++ source files. So I think we're good there. So there's no other place that includes this header that is a header, which means we should be able to include monster safely in there, which means it will have access to monster strategy helpers.h. So is IntelliSense lying to us? Is it just actually lying to us, like right in our face? Because that's what I'm led to believe right now. There's no way it's not defined. Oh, make unique. We have to include memory. Okay, maybe that was the issue. It might have nothing to do with that. But we do need memory for unique pointer. Or no, it's just complaining that we're not done with the constructor, right? So we have to finish making all the parameters for it first. So this is going to be meteor setting. Meteor. It's going to be the fire mage. And then we have all these other things like the fade out, the speed, color, etc., etc. I think by default these will all be set for us, but I could be wrong. Effect, pause, random angle, that's update. Fall speed, damage multiplier. I think that makes the actual, the positioning of it changes. So I don't think we need anything extra here to make the meteor actually appear and look like it's falling, unless we really want to. And so it's at this point that I can close this out, and we should technically have it, but it's still complaining that get float is undefined, even though I kind of have proof that it doesn't. Hi there, Berna Renko. Have you ever tried Vim Motions? No. I don't know what that is. I would assume, though, you would need Vim in order to use whatever that does. Okay. Well, underscore get float. We need to figure out why it's not defined. Because it's going to be called in here, and underscore get int. Now that is part of monster strategy, so this must be referring to a different underscore get int. Oh, you know what? This is actually referring to monster strategy. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder, because these are just static functions, right? So I wonder if the correct approach instead is to prepend all of these with monster strategy. And that would be the correct implementation to let me use it anywhere. And maybe this is a discovery that I didn't realize earlier on, but this actually makes sense. So if I do that, then I don't need to include this because that will automatically come from monster attribute. This is fascinating. Okay, so we go back here. Does that work now? Monster strategy is inaccessible. Oh, okay. This is just in the global scope. So this strategy is private? I don't know why it would be private. There's no real reason for it to be. So let's make this struct public. Public struct. And I will just insert it. I'll be honest, this needs to be higher up because it has all the information about every single strategy for monsters. So I feel like it should be near the top if we're defining it that way. Although I would like to see the actual member functions as well. So maybe this isn't quite the right approach. Maybe it belongs in a public block, but somewhere else. Maybe just in like its own thing. So maybe we'll put it here before all the constructor stuff. I think this makes the most sense. Vim motions is the way to move through text using Vim binds Keyboard-centric text editing. Oh, I see, I see. Yeah, I do learn shortcuts for my IDE, but I'm not entirely sold on just using the keyboard for everything, considering I have a window manager and 3 monitors. I guess if Windows had a better window manager, I think my situation would be a lot better. If I was like in Linux with a nice window manager, I think I could use a keyboard way more exclusively. But unfortunately, with the way I have it set up right now, it wouldn't quite work the way I would like to. Because what would be ideal is that, let's say I pull open like a new source file. I'm like, okay, go to monitor 1 on the left side, right? So it's like, how do I get it here and tell it to do that? Versus like, oh, I want it on monitor 3 on the left side or the right side. Like, figuring out that part and using, like, the way Visual Studio, I have it set up is I actually have 3 Visual Studio windows open, each one then cut in half. So like there's the divider here, which normally I just keep in the middle, so it looks like I just have 6 individual windows, but really it's just 3 windows, so it's a bit more complex. If I could figure that part out, I think I would be more willing to use a lot more keyboard commands, because I do use quite a few when doing actual text editing, but then when interacting with the IDE, once things are pulled up, usually I have to deal with the window or something. Like, I learned pretty much like the bare minimum commands needed to make actual programming not too slow. But I don't know Vim well enough to be able to do anything remotely quickly with it. It is very, very powerful, and it's also a very, very high skill curve, or a skill floor to learn. That's the reason why I exclusively use Linux. I don't touch mouse. Yeah. Like I said, I think if I switched to an actual window manager that is not a Windows desktop manager, I would have a much easier time figuring out the situation, because window managers are just so fluid like that. They divide the windows up very quickly. So we are good to go here. That will at least spawn it. We don't know quite exactly how that will turn out yet, but we will find out shortly. We're gonna go back to the monster source file for a bit and work on the perform spell function, because not only do we have to run whatever spell we are about to cast, but at this point is when we have to subtract the mana from the monster, because the attack has been successfully performed. So all we have to do now is do MP minus equals the cast data, MP cost. And on top of that, for castability, I'm trying to think if we need to do anything else here realistically. I think the big thing we have to do, though, is we have to go to the moved callback. So we have a moved callback. This is called every single time the monster is moved for any reason, whether it chooses to or it gets bumped by something. Anytime the monster has to move, if we are detected to be casting something, our cast will get interrupted at this point. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, if current cast, then we are first going to stop that cast. So we're going to say current cast reset, and then we will follow that up with actually, we want like that interrupted text to pop up but for the monster instead. So we're going to get a damage number displayed here. So we're gonna do game, let me see, where would I do that? I think, I'm pretty sure the damage numbers are in Adventures in Listoria.cpp. So we're gonna go there real quick. And if I'm not mistaken, there should be something about damage numbers here. Because we have the damage number list, but I'm not convinced this is how we actually add them to the list by modifying the list directly. I'm pretty sure we made some kind of like add damage number system. And I just undid a bunch of stuff I should not be undoing. Okay. Back to the damage number list. I'm pretty sure we have a function to specifically do this stuff for us. Okay. Let's look for everything that uses or references the damage numbers. How often compiled code don't... With the intention of the dev in game dev, is the testing part to... Wait, what? Oh, how often in game dev does the compiled code not do what the intention of the dev is? I would say probably maybe at least like 60 or 70% of the time if you are first making it. And the reason why I say that is because this is like a creative process, right? Let's say I make this meteor effect and then I run it and I play it and then I'm like, that doesn't quite work, or that doesn't feel good, right? It's not just about, oh, did we write it to spec and doesn't work, but is that actually like a fun thing? Like, there's more with intention for game when it comes to like fun. It's like, do I actually like that? Does that feel good? Because that's also part of the intention of game dev, right? It has to be a fun, interesting game, not just, oh, I said it was gonna do this, but if it's not fun, then suddenly I don't want it to do that. I thought it was fun, but it's actually not. No, it's okay. I figured it out after a minute. So, yeah, that's a bit of a challenge, is you could code everything right, and I would say probably like half the time it's coded right the first time, but the more complicated the game gets, of course, the more stuff you might forget. But a lot of the times it's not even like the intention of the game dev to have it that way. Like, they might find out, oh, actually making it this fast is not how I thought it was gonna be, and it should be slower. Like, the bullet's too fast, the player actually cannot dodge it. The MP cost is too high, it takes too long to get back mana to use it again, it's not balanced. Like, the game dev aspect of it makes it a lot more challenging to just be like, oh, I programmed it and I'm done. Debugging systems that are hard to be triggered, like testing if the drops from boss are correct. Ah, yeah. That's a little easier because, well, I'll be honest, with unit testing that is very easy to do because I can just go in and trigger that myself, right? And we actually do have a test for something like that. It's like, okay, just spawn a test monster, hurt it, basically emulated dying, and then seeing if it has drops, and then you can also see if it has the correct drops by then checking the loot table. This test doesn't specifically do that, but we just would run the program like you would if you were doing unit testing for any software, and you just call the right functions and see if the state of the game matches what you would expect, right? The graphics are not generally tied to the actual state of the game, well, the graphics being tied to the state of the game visually is another separate challenge, right? But the game state working underneath, the backend, I guess if you want to call it that, can be easily tested, because essentially everything in the game is a backend minus the graphics. Whatever you put on the graphics card is the only front end you have to figure out. How do you match the state of your program to the user so the user can see it? Hi there. I don't mind being called Sig or Amy. Yeah, I still go by either. Yeah. You thought it would be more complicated than Unity testing? I think it also depends on if you want to test the graphics, right? The Factorio devs had an interesting explanation about how they would run a certain test, then they would have the game screenshot, like capture all the pixels on screen and compare it to a baseline picture and say, okay, do all the pixels on screen match something that happens after these set of instructions are ran? So you can test graphics, but it's a bit more wonky in that sense. And sometimes testing is backwards, right? It's like, especially for RNG functions, if I force RNG, like I set a certain seed and I make it run that every single time, I don't actually know what the result will be the first time. So I run it and then I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to test for every time. So I know it's consistent. And I would say that is how it would work for graphics programming. I would do it in reverse. I would run the game, see what it looks like, and say, okay, the game has to look like this every single time, and go from there. So sometimes you have to reverse test because of the graphical part. But yes, welcome. I still don't know what to call you. Smooits? But yes, welcome. Okay, so I'm looking for how we actually spawn these damage numbers, because I would like to not just insert it into a list, but I'm afraid that is oh, it might actually be a damage number static function. So let's go to damage number and look at the header. There are no static functions here. Okay. So I wonder if I want to do that, because I don't like this idea of including the damage list and pushing back a new shared pointer to a damage number every single time I want to display a damage number. Does that... I don't really like that. So we're going to fix this now. Apparently I have been using that the whole time. Hello, I am the briefcase. I have a dumb question, but is it hard to deal with memory management in projects like this? Not if you're using modern C++. And I say that because modern C++ provides a lot of memory safety and tools to prevent you from having to manage it yourself, right? But we actually had an incident last week where we corrupted the stack because I destroyed a shared pointer of something when I should have used a weak pointer from a shared pointer source. So it is, I would say it's still easy if you don't know how to use modern C++. Because then you're either stuck with using like C-like programming, which is basically like no memory safety, or if you don't understand what C++ is doing with your unique pointers, your shared pointers, reallocating your vectors, you're going to have problems, or you're going to run into memory issues, or like your references, right? And you can, if you still try to use like raw pointers, you run that risk of the memory being bad and you're just running random stuff. Do pseudo-randomness on games depend on entropy? I would say so, yeah. funny enough, when I was first testing my game and I was testing crits, I kept getting the same numbers and I was wondering why. And the entropy of my random function was so bad that it couldn't generate randomness randomly enough. It just looked like it was the same numbers like 80% of the time. And that was because I had like a shoddy way of doing it too. I do what everybody does at first, is just try to use built-in random, which actually has very bad entropy. So eventually, we resort to an actual distribution that somebody else wrote, this Mersenne Twister 1993, whatever. Yeah, that one. So yes, we ran into that before where it's like, okay, because you can even see here, I wrote a distribution of numbers between 0 and 32767 to simulate old random style random, but it's actually random. It has better entropy. So that's still a thing if I needed it. Okay, yeah, so I'm adding a static. So I would say it's not too hard if you actually rely a lot on the C++ features. At least modern C++. And modern meaning anything C++ 11 and further. So not too modern. You don't have to know like bleeding edge, but knowing at least how to use the memory library is very handy, because unique pointers are a godsend to memory management. Shared pointers a little more foot gunny though. You have to be very careful. You could duplicate memory in multiple places and then kill it and instantly crash your program. So you have to be very careful about that. Or even worse, you thought you deleted a pointer, but it actually exists in multiple places, and so it's just wandering around still doing its thing. Like, imagine I was supposed to kill a monster in a game, and it's just wandering around still, and you're like, why is it still alive? What is keeping it alive right now? I thought I killed this thing. It's like, oh god. Right? You have to be very careful. I think as long as you're aware of how your project works though, like any project, then you're gonna avoid a lot of pitfalls. But it takes a lot of experience and a lot of experimenting and a lot of trial and error to learn what works and what does not. And we still make these errors every day, so even then, it's still a challenge. So I'm gonna call this add create spawn damage number, add damage number. I like add damage number. So we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna specify the parameters. So we would basically do it like a constructor. I'm just making the constructor like this. I wonder, would it make more sense to put the damage number in here? It is a struct, but it's not a, but I would still have to define it like this, so I think this is okay. So we're gonna, basically, I just want a function that accesses damage number list, so I don't have to do it manually or remember where to do it every single time. Because that's my issue, is I don't want to have to remember, oh, I gotta include the global damage list in the game, then add my own new shared pointer to it. I honestly have yet to do something that complicated with C++ to involve unique pointers. That's interesting, because if you ever use a raw pointer at any point in your code, then you could substitute that with unique pointers. Because somewhere in your heap, you are accessing that pointer, unless you are just dealing with, what is it called? RAII? Resource allocation, allocated instantiation something. I forget exactly what it is, but if you're only using objects that way, then I guess you're okay. And that is a very safe practice. That's what C++ tries to do, is like just allocate your objects on the fly and have them get destroyed and have the destructors do all the cleanup for you so that none of the memory management has to happen on your end. It's all done behind the scenes. At least that's like the vision when it comes to C++, is trying to do all the allocation on the spot, on the fly. Let me look that up. I want to know the actual name of it. This is like something that would be like a good random C++ interview question, you know? RAII is a C++ programming technique which binds resource acquisition is initialization. Yes. Binds the life cycle of a resource that must be acquired before use. Allocated heap memory, thread of execution, open socket, blah, blah, blah. Everything must be done right when it's created. And it's locked to the lifetime of the object. RAII guarantees the resources available to any function that may access the object. It guarantees all resources are released when the lifetime of their controlling object ends, in reverse order of acquisition. And I think that's a really important point, right? If you open a file and then you read from that file and you create like 3 variables or something and then use those variables, the order of destruction would be get rid of those 3 variables, then close the file, because those variables might rely on something from the file. And so RAII guarantees that you do everything in the right order, so nothing is ever dependent on anything else, and it's like a hierarchy. And that's really all a complex program is, right? It's a hierarchy of data, allocations. You start from your main, you create probably your main object, your main managers. Your managers create things, and then those things will run their code and do other things, and everything's like a hierarchy. So then to go in reverse, you destroy everything in the same order to get rid of them all. That's the concept. I understood it, but I forgot what it stood for. And I just forgot what it stood for again. Resource acquisition. Resource acquisition is initialization. Anyway, that's just fun little side project. Side tangent. So we're gonna make the damage list, number list known inside of here. And when we do this, we're going to emplace back whatever damage number we created. So I can literally just include all these arguments like so, but without the defaults, because there are no defaults in the implementation. Fried, friendly, and type. Okay. So that's all I needed to do there. So now we have a static function. I am very tempted to now go back and change all of these. I think another useful thing to do would be to return the shared pointer of the damage number, because it looks like we want to use it after we create it, right? So I would like to have access to my brand new damage number. Now, do I give it a shared pointer, or do I just give the resource directly? Why would I need the pointer, right? When I can just give it access to the reference. But then the question becomes, what happens when this vector reallocates because I call another add damage number? That's why we use pointers in the first place. The pointers will remain, but the memory that reference is referred to may not. It might refer to a dead damage number. And that's why in C++, you can run into these pitfalls if you don't know what's going on. This is a vector. If you add enough stuff to the vector, it eventually has to reallocate and move all the data. So what it does is it copies every object in the list to another place. And it's a copy, it's not a move. So because it's a copy, every single object now exists somewhere else in memory, and your references or pointers you had before are stale. That's why we have to heap allocate these, because if this vector increases in size, you will still have access to them because they've been heap allocated. So we do want to return a shared pointer in case we need to reference this at a later point in time. And I'm just going to give, I think I'll just give a shared pointer directly, like so. Because if I give it a reference, again, that reference to that shared pointer might go stale, which is not how we want to do things. So, yeah. We're going to change it to have the return type to give us a shared pointer to this damage number, so that we can do stuff with it. So now, and place back, we'll return our object, so we can return it directly. And then from here, we're going to go back, and now for every opportunity or moment where we've done this. Also, do we have any changes? It looks like we do. We have like meteor changes. This is a pretty significant change and could be useful for our demo build as well. So what I would like to do is to separate this change from what we're currently working on in the actual game itself, because I can then cherry pick that commit back to my demo. So I'm going to stash specifically the damage number changes. How would we do this? I need these changes. I guess we make a patch, because I can't really just stash two things. I would have to stash the whole commit. So what we could do instead is... Oh, I would have to remember how to do this. I mean, the rudimentary way would be to just copy these files somewhere in my computer, undo these changes, commit, then restore these changes by copying the new files back in here. I guess that's a rudimentary way to do it, but there is a patch command. I just forgot to use it, and I don't really want to bother with it right now, so I'm going to take both the damage number source file, CPP, and header, and I'm just going to throw them into a temporary location. We'll go from there. Maybe we can manually manage the vector whenever that happens somehow. So a vector is essentially like a linked list, right? Or kind of like a linked list. It's more like an array that's been allocated with a certain amount of items, and then when an item gets added to it, it says, okay, well, if the list is too small, allocate a new array that's larger, a fixed size. So you gotta think internally, well, what would you do instead of that? You could do a linked list. A linked list is very slow though, because you have heap allocations going in all sorts of places in memory. One of the benefits of using a standard vector is all the elements are still contiguous like an array. So it provides a speed benefit and a memory caching benefit. Whereas if you just want to, you could use standard list, which is your C++ version of a linked list, which won't have that allocation problem because every single node points to another node, the next node in memory. So there is a C++ implementation of a linked list, but linked lists are known to be really slow and a bit memory hoggy, because you have to have at least 2 data elements per element. You have to have a pointer to the current object, and you have to have a pointer to either you're holding the object in that node, or you're holding a pointer to that object in the node, and then a pointer to the next element in the list. And if you want a reverse linked list, then you need another pointer going back. So, unfortunately, linked lists are just not very effective if you're going to iterate through them a lot. And with games, we like we like contiguous space. Although we're using pointers, so it's only contiguous on one level, because if we want to actually have that extra speed benefit, we're still doing one dereference, right? Because a pointer, you have to dereference that. So we're still jumping one place, but at least we're not jumping to another place of memory to then jump to another place of memory. So we're avoiding one jump by doing this. Programming's hard. But that's why a lot of people, when doing very optimized game programming, do not end up using the default C++ libraries, because you might use like a memory arena. That's very common. You just have a bunch of memory and you allocate what you need as you need it and get rid of it. Or a lot of people like to hype up ECS, and ECS is really good if you're going to have a lot of objects that all need to do very similar things, because ECS essentially is that contiguous array, and every object you need is also contiguous, which makes it very, very fast. But it also requires a very different design, and you have to really understand how to use it in order to not get like worked up in the details of it, because it's very easy to design an ECS incorrectly, and now it's like impossible for you to use. It's like hard to add like something walking from destination X to Y, or like adding a trigger to your game if you don't do it right. So there's always benefits and downsides to pretty much anything you use, but with programming, the beauty of it is you try one, you see if it works, and you only really optimize when things get slow, right? That's the idea. You don't want to like optimize too early. So like when we finally noticed our game was starting to run slow, that's when I had to go back to the main loop and be like, okay, or render world, I think, was the best example of this. So this is the render function for our game. This like literally takes everything in the game and displays it on screen. And you can see it's rather massive, right? It has to do this every single frame. And this actually used to be a lot worse. So at one point the game was starting to run slow, and we found out that most of the time was spent in rendering. So using our profiler, we found the slow points, and it turns out for most of these like lists, we were actually copying data over and over, which is a big no-no. You really don't want to copy anything, right? So modern C++ actually has a good solution to copying, like if you need to filter out lists of data or copy lists of data, you want to work with like references or views, and C++20 provides a solution with filter views, which makes it very easy to copy only specific pieces of data into temporary lists without actually copying the data, but they're instead views into the data. So you can see here, like we're using what's called standard ranges sort on this monster list, or excuse me, not standard ranges sort. Where is it? Here we go. We're using standard views filter on like this vector, and what it returns is a list view. So this list view, a filter view, is only a window of the data that you filtered out. And then because these are only like references and not copies of the memory, this essentially makes things a lot faster. And you see we have to do this for a lot of things. So this added up very quickly. Yeah. That's a really good example, actually. In SQL, you can speed up a lot of your queries by using views instead, because then all of your data you're accessing is already like kind of cached. You're not really working with real data that you are constantly modifying. You just have this like small subset that you're manipulating instead, and it makes it a lot faster. So it's very similar to that. Yeah. So it's a very powerful feature and was a very quick way to optimize our game, considering the game is so large and it's like, well, we have to change everything. What are we gonna do, right? So, yeah. Also, let me turn on the AC real quick. It's a little warm. Okay, so I am still gonna go through and do all those changes, but I need to. So I just copied damage number CPP and .h into its own files. So I'm going to now undo the changes in both files to isolate those changes into its own commit. So first I'm going to commit everything I have here, which is all related to the meteor casting ability. And this is a work in progress. So I'm not actually going to commit it. I'm going to stash it. So I should not stage these, but I should stash these. Let's see here. Stash. Where's the stash? Where's the... Okay, well, apparently, there's no stash button. So I'm just git stashing it manually with the git command. But apparently, I can't... Like, it shows visually the stashes here. Maybe... Hold on, let me restore this one. So let me just pop and restore. There must be a way to do this. Like, this literally... There's a visual... Can I drag it? No. That's confusing. Let me go to the git submenu. Commit or stash. Okay. I don't see how I would stash from this menu though. What does it want me to do? That's push, fetch, pull. Fetch from, push to, sync. Push all tags, manage. I don't get it. How does it want me to actually perform a stash from this interface? I am stumped. Visual Studio, stash, get changes. Is it possible to use git stash from Visual Studio? In Visual Studio 2019, in the Team Explorer window, you can select changes. Right next to the commit button, there is a stash. In the Team Explorer window. Team Explorer? That's folder view. I don't want that. Team Explorer. Okay, window. Or view. Other windows. Oh, Team Explorer. Control backslash plus Control M. Git features have moved. Use the Git menu to open repositories and access other Git-related features. Git repository, Git changes, Git repository. Can I stash from here? I can reset, but oh, keep... No, don't do that. Don't reset. I am so perplexed. Good morning, Amy. Good morning, Plasticky. Hi. I'm ordering Girl Scout cookies. What kind do you want? Ooh. I always like those, what do you call them? The... God, what are they? Hold on. Well, I always like the mint ones, but that's a little... But I get those all the time. So they... it's the... Crud. It's the Caramel Delights, these guys. I love these. But yeah, I always get the Thin Mints, so I don't really want the Thin Mints. So yes, but I do want these caramel ones. They're good. Wrong account? Who's this? Now I'm curious. Thank you, Plasticky. Okay. Get changes. So then that brings us to this window, right? It's like, okay. More info, settings, repository settings. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, y'all. You have to stage the oh, stash appears besides commit after staging. Really? Stage. Stash appears commit staged. Oh, stash all. Include untracked. Or I can just stash and keep staged. That's interesting. Okay. Okay. That's good. I like that. Okay. Cool. Let me delete all these other stashes. They're kind of old. So I'm going to restore this one. And so now we know how to stash from the GUI. I don't know why I was so fixated on it. I just wanted to know because I'm like, there's got to be a way, right? If it's on the interface. I didn't know they renamed Caramel Delights. Oh, it's System Crash. Gotcha. Welcome, welcome. Anyway, apparently I have to use this button to stash. Good to know. So we're going to stash that now, and then we're going to bring in the changes to damage number. So we're going to replace those files, and now we have changes specifically to damage number, which we can bring in and create as its own commit. So these should have updated. I think I have to close these and reopen them for get to know what's going on, or did I mess up? It doesn't say anything changed, so did I mess up? Yeah, this doesn't have the static function I added. That's weird. Oh hey, it's plasticky, but Crimson. But that's plasticky too. Hi plasticky, again. Ooh woo. I thought I copied these files. Hold on. Don't tell me I copied these files after I stashed. If not, we'll just rewrite them, right? That's not too hard. Okay. It looks like I stashed the files and then copied them, which is strange. Or maybe I didn't save. Maybe I didn't hit Control S. Okay, that would make sense, actually. So... yeah. And I already undid those changes. Okay, so now that we're on a blank slate, and this is on a stash, though, we can go in now and do our static void. I think we did add damage number. So add damage number. Oh yeah. That's the same system crash, plasticky. Yeah. Isn't that neat? I was recommended Amy's channel organically via game dev stuff. Yeah. That's pretty cute. Yeah, add damage number. We're gonna provide a... We're just gonna use the same parameters as the constructor here. Oh, and it's gonna return the shared pointer. Standard shared pointer damage number. And then we're bringing that in to the source file. And in here, we're just calling emplace back and returning it. So we're gonna need damage number list, which honestly, damage number list should live in here. I don't think it currently does, but it should. That would make the most sense. This was designed a long time ago, so it's got a bit of that old code syndrome where it's like, oh, this is how we used to do things, and it was kind of crude, and now we have different rules, different coding conventions. So this particular thing suffers from that. Oh yeah, Solstice was a lot of fun, so I'm glad we all got to experience that. That was really neat. It's a fun way to have like a tournament, a PvE tournament, sorta. That was fun. So now I was going to replace all the add damage number calls throughout the file. That way, we're using the new system. So we're gonna search for any places where we reference damage number. And we're gonna go in and edit those to instead, let's see, so any place we do a standard make shared, or we just directly add the number to, we're gonna replace it with damage number list, or damage number, add damage number. So instead of all this, now we're going to do add damage number. And it should result in essentially the same thing, but now we don't have to worry about knowing that this global damage number list even exists in the first place. These are fine. Damage numbers update. And then down here we have, again, same thing. So we're going to be doing this quite a bit because we're going to have to deal with it in a couple places. So I'm probably just going to keep that handy on the clipboard. And there's another one down here. Let's keep going. Yeah. And one here. And that doesn't look right. What happened? Is that right? Let me see. Have to make sure I'm not messing these up, right? Yeah. Okay. We'll review all the changes too, just to make sure we didn't do anything crazy afterward. Oh, we have to be careful to remove the damage number list add part too, if we need to. Yeah, because this is not only very wordy, but it means we're modifying the list in many places in our code, which is quite dangerous, I will say. So we're trying to avoid that now. And yeah, this is essentially the same line of code we're going to use when a monster gets interrupted. We're going to display the interrupt text too. I'm just going to compress some of these lines here. And anywhere else. I think we got them all. So now that we've done all that, we can go ahead and commit these changes. Update damage numbers class to include a add damage numbers method. Switch all manual insertions of damage numbers to utilize the new function. And let's make sure this builds. That's pretty important. Oh, this is unit testing. Oops. Switch start a project. Release desktop. And build. The girl who sells cookies isn't here today. Aww. Maybe next time, girly. I'm sorry. It's like stuck compiling one file. Hello? You gonna compile the rest? Once I look over, it's like, oh, okay, I'll do more now. Yeah, I'm like, you just gonna compile that one file? You gotta do way more. Okay. So yeah, that's gonna be that. And then, most importantly, we're going to cherry pick this back into the demo, because this is something the demo build could also use. So this is going to be release build 12408. So yeah, this is just completely unrelated to actually making the skeleton fire mage work, but sometimes we have those, right? So I'm going to go to branches, and we're just going to grab the commit ID, because later we need to know what we're going to cherry pick into there. And right now my CPU is being used for compiling, so things go a little slower. Any day now. Okay. So we can click this. And we can right click, view commit details, and then we can copy the commit ID, and I just keep a list of all the commits that we're gonna have to push into the demo build eventually, because we'll spend a day sprucing up the demo build with important stuff, of course. This is from Skeleton Fire Mage. Okay. So yeah. Just more relevant stuff to cherry pick out eventually. And now we can go ahead and well, the build failed. No matching function? Really? Really? Pause damage. Friendly. Oh. This function is not correctly defined. The defaults are not supposed to exist in the implementation. And I make that mistake a lot. I literally said it yesterday. I make this mistake a lot. And I did it again. Classic. So that's probably why I didn't want to finish building. It still failed. Same reason, it looks like. I mean, I literally copy pasted the constructor parameters. Oh, it's a vector of shared pointers, so we forgot to make shared. So it's right now expecting a constructor for a shared pointer. So we have to invoke the shared pointer templated constructor to make the damage number, which then is the parameter or the constructor for a shared pointer. So yes, that is a mistake, and that commit will have to be amended because we changed that and made a mistake. Mistakes happen. We can only hold so much knowledge in our heads. Yes, that is true. Especially in programming. Missing external. What? Oh. Yeah. I have to say this is part of class damage number. That's pretty important. Yes, yes, yes. At least we're at the point where we pretty much know what is wrong, right? The worst part is when something doesn't work and you don't know what is going on. That's the worst feeling. And that's where a majority of programming, debugging, and time is spent, is on problems that you don't know why they're happening, and they are, and you're trying to make any sense out of it. So build succeeded, so we're good now. And I'm amending that commit because that is a mistake. So it's just going to put that commit in with the other commit. And now we're going to restore. We're going to pop and restore staged to get back to working on our current stuff. So the whole reason I did all that is because when a monster gets interrupted from casting, we also want that interrupt text to pop up for the monsters. So we're now going to go back here, and we're going to the moved callback. And inside of moved, we were saying if current cast gets reset, as in the ability where casting goes away, and then this is where we go damage number, add damage number. And then we can specify all this for us. So we're doing it at our position. Damage doesn't matter. Friendly is going to be false, as in it's a monster. And then in the damage number type, which is now going to be interrupt. So that will make or spawn that text to pop up. I love when the game hangs and there's no error messages. Yes. Classic. What do you work on, System Crash? Now I'm curious. So now I have to think, is there anything else that we need to take care of? I guess we should reset the animation of the monster, because we would be stuck in a casting animation. So let's just perform the idle animation afterward. I'm working with Unity. It's C++ or C#. Yeah. Nice. Is that like your job, or is that just hobby stuff? So casting, set the current cast, perform the animation, and then we have to make it so when the cast finishes, it calls perform spell. So let's go up to the update function and take care of that. So right now, if has abilities, we have the mana recovery timer portion. So we're going to come back to this line, because this line is where we determine what we cast. If current cast, reduce cast timer. When cast timer is less than or equal to 0, perform the spell. Current cast reset. Okay. And then perform spell resets to idle animation, subtracts the MP. So we're good there. So all that's left now is determining which spell to cast and when. So right now, I'm curious why at some point... Oh, here we go. Has abilities. If has abilities... Where does it set current cast right now? Because I think in our unit test earlier, it was just doing that. Let me see. So we would be calling cast spell. Oops. Where is this being called right now? It has to be called somewhere. Oh, here it is. So we wrote, if can move, iterate through all abilities, random chance, see if we cast the ability. This should not be run every frame, and that's the issue we were running into, is we have to do this only once every second. So then this line of code actually only runs in here, but I would argue that it's only supposed to be done when the monster's alive, so we need to add either an if is alive check here, or move this down into here, which would make more sense. Like, we shouldn't be recovering mana if we're dead, right? That wouldn't make any sense. And we shouldn't be trying to cast our ability when we're dead either. Yeah, like this would make it so if we're in the middle of a cast while we're dead, it would perform it. So these are some things that need to be moved to only if the monster is alive. So that would make sense. And only if we can move? That's not necessarily true, but try to cast things, include everything related to casting in here, because this is all inside of an if the monster is alive block. It's something I'm trying to pursue full time. Oh, nice, nice. The undead character support, yes. Generally, a few things like the animation loop still has to run, collisions still run, so like you can actually push dead monsters around, which was totally an accident, but it's really funny. Interaction still works, so like if you knock up enemies, dead monsters still get knocked up. It just looks natural, right? Like they're still interactable, just they don't take damage. And they don't die repeatedly and give you, like, rewards and experience, so that's the only thing. But yes, it's kind of an accident, but it also works. It makes them feel alive while dead. As silly as that sounds, right? So we have if can move. We want to move this into the mana recovery timer. It doesn't really make it a mana recovery timer anymore, does it? So maybe we should refactor this and call it like the, let's call it the ability tick timer. I think that would make the most sense. But it handles mana too, so it's like the ability and mana tick timer. Do I want to be that specific? I think I do. I want to make sure I understand that it handles both abilities and mana. It's a little wordy, but it also represents what it actually is. Some games do use that. Having corpses be part of the environment. Yeah. Ooh, triple tribe. Good luck with the grind. And thanks for stopping by, System Crash. Have a good session. See you around. So with this being here now, it only runs these every second. And also, it can only cast one ability. Like, if it chooses to cast Meteor, it can't then go and try and cast Firebolt. That would override it, right? So we break out of the loop after we've chosen something to cast. And of course, we can only cast abilities if we have abilities, so that part makes sense. And we're only running this code while we are alive. This is every frame, so we're good there. So I think we're at a point where we can finally test the meteor. So what I'm going to have to do is place one of these skeleton fire mages inside a test level. So we're going to go to level 4-1. And we just have a spawner right at the beginning here. Oh gosh. And we're going to delete the skeleton barbarian and captain. And I'm going to substitute them with a new monster. But in order to do that, we have to first create a skeleton fire mage entry, which I don't think we've done yet. So let's go to GIMP. Let's take the left-facing sprite of our... this is a placeholder, by the way, of our placeholder, because this is clearly the ranger sprite, but we're using it as the skeleton fire mage sprite for the time being, and it's colored red. And we're going to navigate to campaigns, or excuse me, maps, and go to the monsters tile set. In here we'll add another entry for specifically the fire mage. I don't know where my selection went. Hello? It's just not here. Why? Where? Oh, I'm copying a bad layer. That's why. There's nothing there. Okay. You always gotta check your layers, right? Okay, so we're gonna add this guy right there. And once we add it to the monsters tile set, it is now available in the monsters presets map. So we're going to create a new object tile with that monster, like we've done for the others here. And so we do that. Then we go over to its properties. We call it what it is. It is a skeleton fire mage. And the skeleton fire mage is going to be, we approximate the size with the editor. So the skeleton fire mage has a size of 90%. So 90% of 48 is 43.2. So I'm going to resize this to be a little smaller, and it just represents what the in-game size will be on the map editor for us. And then finally, we're going to save this as a template. Once we save this as a template, then we can use it by dragging and dropping it into our world. So we're going to go over here now, and under our monsters list, we'll find a skeleton fire mage, which we can just drag in here, and we can set its spawner to be this spawn zone right here. So now that we've created that, I'm actually going to move the spawn zone a little back, and the reason why I'm doing that is so that I can watch it right when it spawns, right? Now the skeleton fire mage is going to use a skeleton fire mage strategy, which we have not created yet. So we have to do that next. And for now, we're just going to make the strategy be as simple as doing nothing. It literally will do nothing but cast spells. And that's a built-in system, so I don't have to code anything yet. I just have to make a placeholder strategy. And we just learned recently that the monster strategies are now located at the top of the monster header file. So we will navigate to it. And at the tippity top of it, we will see a list of every strategy. So now we'll go ahead and add a new one. Also, does this not exist? Really? Huh. Only Skeleton Captain flag exists. That's strange. Did I call it something else? What would I have called it? Skeleton Captain, there it is. It's like the IDE just doesn't detect that it exists. Silly IDE. Alright. Anyway, we're adding a new one called Skeleton Fire _ Mage. And then we have to go to Monster Strategy. Under Monster Strategy Helpers. No? Where would it be? Under the strategy class, maybe? Well, it's not here, clearly. Oh, it's a static, so maybe it's at the top of monster. C++ IntelliSense information will refresh after gathering information from CMake. This project may be compatible for remote development. Would you like to install Visual Studio's Linux and Mac support? No? I don't really think so. But what are we doing with CMake? CMake configuration file. Use CMake presets if available. Show CMake cache notifications. Always run configure step automatically. I mean, that's fine. I don't know what it's trying to do right now. But okay. But yeah, we need to find where this is defined. It's clearly not at the top of this. Oh? Wait, this is monster data. But just normal monster.cpp, which I keep getting sniped by the changing list. It changes really slowly. It's being rude to me. So it's not under the monster constructor. Where is this thing? Is it under, like, run? Oh, it's run strategy. That's what it is. So if I go to run strategy, I always forget. The strategy data are in here. So this is the skeleton fire mage. And now we have to make this, because it does not exist yet. So skeleton fire mage. Let's add a new CPP file. Okay. And inside of here, we're going to write our strategy. I'm going to copy do nothing for now because it's literally going to do nothing. But this is skeleton underscore fire mage. Okay. So with that out of the way, the game should be able to now detect that skeleton fire mages do nothing. And it should start being able to cast abilities. It will randomly choose between Meteor and Firebolt. Meteor costs... Oh, we don't have MP cost checking. So that's another thing we have to do. We can only cast the ability if we have enough mana for it. So I'm going to go back to the update function and under here, first we determine if we can randomly cast it. If we can cast it, we need to know if we have enough mana. So not only this, but and MP is greater than or equal to the MP cost. That part is important. Otherwise, it'll just cast even when it has no mana available to it, which is absolutely silly. So for every second now, the skeleton fire mage will choose one of two abilities. It can choose a meteor, and if it chooses the meteor attack, it has a 60% chance to do so and will cost 50 MP. It can also choose Firebolt. Firebolt costs 20, but it's only 10% of the time. But it will only do these checks every second. So the game is on, but I need to rebuild it one more time with the MP cost checking included, because the MP cost is important. So let's see it finish up here. One up to date. Really? It built this file after the fact? I'm just gonna do it one more time, just for safety. Okay, and now we're good. So it looks like it throws an error, so let's see what that error is when the game runs. Can the game run, please? Alright. Oh, the default pack ID. Of course, of course. So I am going to have to hide for a second while I get this for y'all. So just wait 1 minute, please. And I think that comes with the pack, the stashing as well. It will stash that file, which has the game pack key. So I think we're good now. I don't think we added any assets. So I should just be able to run it now with the pack ID, which should be able to unencrypt that file. Okay, excellent. And we are going to go right into that level and then see about the casting. So I am going to pull up the terminal for this, if I can find it. Where is it? Do I not get a terminal with this? I guess I get a log file. Oh, right. So we can pull up the log. So this is hidden by my camera. But essentially I have a command that allows me to look at the debug log. Maybe. I think it's just /debug log. Debug.log. Oh, that literally just pulls up the file. That's not right. Oh, that's the debug build. Okay, hold on. I remember we changed it, at least temporarily. Or am I wrong? What is going on? Show output from build? No. There should be a command window. In theory, there should be a command window. Oh, that's funny. Okay. Funny idle, but I'll take it. Alright. Do. Oh. Something broke. Wait. Oh, that's the controller thing. Yeah. That's fine. Okay. So, this thing has to generate mana first, which I assume it's doing right now. And then that looks like a cast. I assume it's in the middle of cast right now. So I assume this is running. Yeah, so current cast, Meteor. Cast timer should go down. Which it does. Oh, you know what? It probably just keeps overwriting it if it's casting. But that's because can move keeps triggering. So is that what's happening? It keeps calling castability? Let's see. It looks like I have no breakpoint for castability at all. It's just optimized out. But I do have a breakpoint for that line. So it looks like it can get in here and set up a cast. Current cast is null. So I think it clears out the cast. Oh wait, what? Oh, maybe the moved function gets called repeatedly. Is that what's happening? Like, there's gotta be a reason it gets canceled after, right? If we're here, let's just, let's breakpoint this value. Right? So, I didn't want to breakpoint it here, though. I wanted to breakpoint it in the other list. Here. It's current cast dot get. Okay, how would we get in optional to watch that? I guess I could have watched for cast timer, but if we can't use that syntax directly, it's dot value. That's what it was. We might have to do a debug mode for this one. This looks a bit iffy. Like something's wrong. Oh. We reset it to cast every frame instead of when it's done. That's the problem. Okay, okay. That makes more sense. Oh, you know what? I think it's read debug log. There we go. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So if we're running the game, we can watch its output or contents within here, which is great. Okay. So that's all well and good. Okay. So right now it's preparing to cast, or it's generating mana. Now it's casting, and there it is. And it's gone. Now it's waiting. Then it's casting. Meteor. So we can see a shadow for a meteor, but then it just dies. So that clearly is not what we need to do. I think we're supposed to just set it to infinity or something, and it's supposed to die on its own. But let's check the code again, shall we? Like, how do we know when it's done? Right? I guess that's the real question. So it will set the lifetime itself. But what is the lifetime to begin with? Let's check when the player does it. So we'll go to Wizard. And we're looking to see what happens when Meteor is cast. You can see it's a similar style structure to monster casting. It uses a lambda function, which has it summon the meteor. So it looks like the lifetime is 3. Like it literally says 3. So I guess if we want to, we can increase the fall speed. Let's see. Because I saw there was like a fall speed multiplier for Meteor. So yeah, this is our lifetime. Divide equals fall speed multiplier, which is currently 1.5 times. So do I just increase it more? Like 2 times? 3 times? I guess 2 times. And we'll try it again. Because clearly that wasn't enough time, but that's my target time, so I'm not sure if that's quite what we want. Okay. I think the sprite is also whack because of the sprite sheet size. I think that's the real reason. Yeah, it says it's 24 by 24 right now. So that's why it's all wacky right now. But that's an easy enough fix. We're just looking at some weird cut-off sprite right now. Yeah. Apparently that is still not enough if that is, but, we actually got a firebolt cast, according to the log. Firebolt has been casted by Monster Skeleton Fire Mage, so we know at least sometimes that will work, and we saw it was a faster cast time, which is also nice, so that clearly works. Let me adjust the sprite sheet size, because it's now, I think, 32 by 32. At least for this one. Yes. Okay. And we're still trying to figure out the full speed multipliers. So for some reason it's just not going fast enough. I'm gonna try 5 times. Oh, you know what? It divides the lifetime by the full speed multiplier. So the lifetime just needed to be long enough to begin with. So if I want a 2-second fall speed, yes, that's 1.5 seconds fall speed mult, but I set the initial fall speed to 3, so it does have enough time. So we have to go back to monster ability. And make the monster meteor fall time to 3 seconds. I guess if we wanted to, we could add the multiplier there and then put it in here. By calculating the fall time, right? I think that will work. So we do 3 divided by whatever the meteor fall time is. I like that. Meteor fall time. And that will correctly multiply this by that amount. Cool. So that should now give us what we want. I am understanding. It was built with a fall speed of 3 in mind, or a fall lifetime of 3 in mind, and then it gets divided by the fall speed multiplier, which sets us up for the meteor fire circles. But that timer has to expire or they won't appear in the first place. Okay. So I did change the sheep frame size, but it didn't seem to matter. Okay. And why does it go away? I don't understand. Something's not right. Let's see. Update. It can't be shake field. And the case should be skeleton fire mage, so that should trigger. I don't see why the lifetime would be affected that dramatically. I'm a little confused, right? So I'm trying to think what else I changed. I mean, maybe the meteor radius? I doubt it. But clearly this part is not happening, and the lifetime part is. Yeah, I'm just not sure what's going on. So I guess we might have to go into debug for this one. It's just so strange to me. So bizarre. Like, it clearly is alive for like 3 seconds, so let's just breakpoint there and see if it pops up. Because it's more than likely to do it, so it will surely do it again momentarily. Okay. So no breakpoint has been triggered due to that. So the lifetime is hitting 0 before this thing finishes spawning. And we look at wizard. And we literally see it's the same exact time. Oh, the fade out time is probably wrong. Okay. So probably the meteor fade out time actually was important, right? And maybe we could use the default for that. So I will go ahead and do so. And that's probably why we didn't see the image. And potentially didn't see a meteor crash. Because it probably used that fade out time to figure out something. That's my guess anyway. Okay. Waiting, waiting, waiting. We have the cast. Ow! Key fire ring damage frequency does not exist in data file. Okay. And that's under here. Yeah, okay, so we have to add this because this doesn't exist. The firing damage frequency is supposed to be every second. Wait, it does exist. It's literally the one right above here. Oh, I typoed it. Classic. Classic Amy to typo. Alright. You win this time, game. Whatever. Alright. Casting a meteor. Eventually, it keeps casting firebolt. La 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 la. Oh, and it should be casting at its target, which is the player. Ow. 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 Oh, wow, it's still going. Why is it still going? It's only supposed to last 4 seconds. Lifetime. How do we set the lifetime? Because that's important. Pulsing fire. Fire ring fade out time. Is that the lifetime? Or is this the lifetime? Fire ring lifetime. Okay. Monster strategy firing lifetime times 1.5. Oh no. Delete that one. Okay, so that would have made it 6 seconds. Ow. Or... no, that would... yeah, 6 seconds. Ouchies. Okay. And... the initial damage multiplier did not go off. So we have to take care of that, right? Damage mult. Meteor damage mult. And then the firing damage mult. That's, yeah. That we did not account for. Here we go. So firing damage mult. We have to change this to be the monster strike. Oh, wait. Yeah. No, we did that. Firing damage mult multiplied by... oh, the player's attack. No, no, no. This is the monster's attack. But which monster? How are we supposed to know what the monster is? We have to attach the monster to the pulsating fire. Okay. Or just store the damage, right? If we store the damage of the pulsing fire, that would work too. So we're gonna adjust the constructor to now require a damage value. And I think that'll put us at a good spot. So let's get that done. Okay. So after, or I guess before setting, we'll add in a damage value. And for damage, we're going to store that. Wait, but we know the damage, right? Technically? But what if it gets buffed? Like, what if the monster has a higher attack or something? Right? So we have to account for that too. So really, we have to assign it on the spot. Okay, okay, okay. So... under the pulsating fires constructor, we added int damage. And then we set the damage in the constructor, which is going to invalidate the current calls to it. And those are all in here. So we have to adjust these now to add in a damage value. In this case, the pulsating fire damage here will be this. So it's going to snapshot, which I find interesting. Do we want it to snapshot? I guess we do. Yeah, that is fascinating. We will be snapshotting the damage. I hope that doesn't matter. But yes, snapshot the damage to the monster that is doing this. Also, same with this. This needs to be done via monster. So we need a damage value for the meteor as well. So it's like we need the pulsating fire damage and the meteor damage at the same time. Okay. I see. So we're gonna have to modify meteor as well. So it's gonna be like const standard pair. Oh. Excuse me. Meteor damage and pulsating fire damage. So yeah, we're gonna use a custom standard pair here for this, and I'm just gonna put under using, or under this header that we're using those labels to represent integers. Like so. And then from there, we have modified the constructor. So now we just have to supply those values and store them in memory. Adjust the constructor for meteor to support those values. And then set the damage to the local damage value. So again, for meteor, we're actually going to snapshot the values now, which I think might be the first time we're doing that, but it's partly because of how we designed this ability. So I'm okay with that for now, and I'm just going to leave it that way. Yeah. So when this goes off, the damage is not going to come from here, but from here instead. So if you want to receive buffs or whatever and apply them to the meteor, you have to do it before you cast it, and then even if you lose the buff in the process, it will be snapshotted to that whole entire meteor cast, which is great. Or it could be bad if you have a damage down, of course, and it's going to be damaged off first, because the second damage value is going to make its way into the pulsating fire under here, I believe. Yeah, so this will be the damage value. So it'll be damage dot second. And then we would do something very similar, but for the skeleton fire mage, where again we snapshot the value, but this value comes from the skeleton fire mage itself. So after that, we have to go to damage.second. Now I wonder if I say what is the damage to this, and then I get the damage multiplier from the file, then I have to make sure the damage is actually only specified as the attack right here. So setting followed by damage, right? This is literally just its attack. And then the multiplier is in the meteor, which is very confusing, right? Like, that doesn't really make sense. So maybe we do this, and we say the multiplier is 1x, and the damage is affected by the config value of the skeleton fire mage. Instead, I think it's important we make that distinction because it's entirely possible for us to be like, oh, that's a bug. No, it's not a bug. It's not a bug and is intended. Okay. It's good to make a note like that because it might look weird. I might come here later and be like, oh, that's supposed to be the multiplier inserted from the config file. And I'm like, oh, that's not quite right. Because the comment says so. Okay. So now it's actually damage dot first times damage multiplier, which is still correct. We send damage dot second for the pulsating fire. For pulsating fire, we use damage as the source. Let's see. So for player, so yeah, we have to now substitute the firing damage multiplier into that structure. So we'll have to do that, of course. And same with the player get attack. We'll have to substitute that as well for the first value. So I guess we're gonna go... Wizard, that's what we're going to. Into Wizard, and under Add Effect Meteor, now we have to supply the damage values. So that would be this argument. And the damage values are attack, followed by attack multiplied by the fire ring damage multiplier. And those two are supposed to be integers, so we have to supply standard pair int, or if we want to be more specific, we say standard pair meteor damage, yeah, all this, right? That way it knows. What is this? It's not ambiguous. So that's for the player, and then for monsters, it's going to be so this is now damage, and this one's also damage. And the values we are sending in now are config float meteor damage multiplier, and that's multiplied by the monster's attack, and we have to cast that to an int. And then we also have the firing damage multiplier. And then we also have to cast again to this data structure. Okay. So with all that implemented, now the meteor damage and the pulsating fire damage go through and are specialized for both the monster and for the player. So let's go ahead and build this now and try it again. Now I'll take a quick minute because that's a pretty big modification to quite a few headers. After this, we're pretty much going to get ready to start winding down. With one ability done, we've pretty much successfully set up the casting system, and we'll be working on essentially just making every other ability work next. So that'll be tomorrow. And the framework should pretty much be there now, so it'll be easy enough to utilize all of the features we've added to make the rest of the abilities pretty easily, I'd say. I don't expect we'll have too many more problems. All right. So let's see how this goes now. Still, the sprite is... I don't know what's up with the sprite, I'll be honest. It's kind of weird. Oh yeah, we have to cast at the right spot, right? So we can see the damage is actually correct now. And indeed, the meteor cast does work, but it's actually not the correct spot. So now we have to put it at the correct spot. So the monsters will always target the player, right? So we want to make sure that's the casting position that's provided by the monster. So we're going to go back to monster.cpp. We're going to go down to cast ability, and the cast position will be not get pause, but it will be at the player's position. Ooh, caps lock is on. Okay. It'll be get pause. Cool. Oh, and we also have to make the fire mage's actual AI work. So they do have a specific AI behavior. And so we're gonna need to follow that as well. But right now, let's just make sure that the meteor actually gets casted at the correct location. And then we will commit these changes. Okay, so yes, it did cast it at this spot, which is good. And it will continue to cast this as long as we're still playing, so yeah. I mean, as you can see, it's pretty large, devastating attack, so... Right. And essentially what these will do is they will stay away from the player and try to weave around their target. Also, if they find a flag, they'll try to stay within the flag so that they get hasted, because if they get hasted, yeah, that will easily provide extra benefits. Okay, so that's good. I think the firing's a little large, so I might reduce that. Like, the fire ring size doesn't quite match the sprite, and it feels bad for the player when they get hit by that thing. So I think I will reduce that by a little bit more, just for the monsters. Now, there is a meteor radius property, so maybe I reduce that instead. I really think I should reduce this one, because the numbers don't feel good against the player here. It's like maybe... I don't think it's like doubly too big, but let's try it. Who knows? But we need to find a good feeling value that doesn't... Basically, if we see the size of the rock and we pretty much avoid the rock, we shouldn't get hit by the fire rings. So if the fire rings are still hitting us when we're clearly outside the meteor range, then that doesn't feel good for the player. Also, Sammy Chu, thanks for the follow. Welcome, welcome. So, hopefully these will, or it'll feel a lot better now in comparison. I still don't know why the sprite is, well, how it is right now. It's kind of weird. Oh, but you can see that that bumping thing works, where if you bump into the monster, then yeah. I'm still getting hit by the ring? That's weird. So the ring radius didn't go down, it's just the size of the sprite went down, which is funny. And it also went down by a lot. So what is going on there? I must have done something really weird with it. Okay, so firing particle spawn amount range. Let's see. Let's look at the drawing first. That'll probably tell us a lot. So it's just got rings, and the size comes from the size variable, which was defined up here, right? Yes. So I'm a little confused as to why I'm getting hit so far out when clearly everything up to here is, well, fine. And I changed the right one? Yes. I changed the top one, and I made so it's meteor radius divided by 24. Which dramatically shrunk the image, mind you, but it definitely didn't affect the range. So let's look at the last damage timer. Hurt within a certain radius. The radius is just defined by a radius there. So the image and the radius are two different things. Okay, I see, I see. So we can adjust the effect size, but that won't affect the what's actually displayed. So I think I'll just adjust that a little bit, and then I'm gonna shrink the radius by, oh, I don't know, at least like a quarter, because I think it just needs a small adjustment. So we're gonna try that, a quarter of the size, and I hope that's enough to where it feels good. Like when for the player, if it's large and annoying to avoid, that's okay, because the player wants to be hitting monsters everywhere. But when the player has to avoid the obstacle, then it's like, well, I'm outside the graphic of the meteor, why am I still taking damage? It's a lot more questionable for the player then than it is when the monster is getting hit slightly outside the ring. It's funny how that works, right? Because we want to always give the player, like, the benefit of the doubt, kind of, when it comes to gameplay mechanics. The player should feel like they're empowered. So let's see how this works. So I didn't actually adjust the meteor radius, I just adjusted the effect radius. Okay. That works a lot better, because you have to clearly avoid the giant rock, and if you do, then you're basically not getting hit by the ring. I think the ring could be slightly smaller, so maybe a little bit more. We're getting close though. Like, we can clearly tell that it is doing that. So let's see if we can get one more test. I think a little more tweaking will do it. Yeah, just a tiny fraction. Fractions of fractions more. I think would be great. And like I said, we haven't adjusted the meteor radius, so that might actually be the next thing to look at. Is, should we shrink it more? Like, instead of 300, or is it the graphic? So is it the graphic? Maybe. So yeah, let's go that route. So instead we just reduce artificially the range that the meteor can hit you. Its graphic versus what its actual range is will be slightly offset. I think that's what we're gonna do. So we don't have to really shrink the rock. I think the meteor is at a very good size for the player to avoid. But I think we need to actually shrink the hitbox, the hurt box for it. That's what it is. And then it'll feel pretty good. But I'm happy with how we implemented abilities. Wasn't too bad, and at the end of the day, it's about what I envisioned it. Works quite simply, was easy to implement. We made sure it was flexible enough for us to work with it. I am very happy with that result. So now we just have to obviously make the actual abilities now for these monsters. And stop casting Firebolt, please. There we go. So that feels about right. Let's try one more. Okay, I like that. It feels good. Yeah, it's like, if you can avoid the shadow and a bit more, then you should not get hit, essentially. That one's a little bit close, so that one's okay. It's like, basically, you don't want to cut it like too close, right? That's the idea. This feels like a good size now. I like it. Okay, I'm happy with that. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and commit that because that is a very good point to be at. I'm going to close this Team Explorer window. So a lot of changes. Yes, yes. So what did we do? We added Skeleton, Fire Mage, strategy setup, casting capabilities, added 2 monsters, and we also made it so Meteor implemented for skeleton fire mages. Rebuilt Meteor to handle player versus enemy properties more fluidly. And this is going to be release build 12424. Very good. So quite a few changes. And now we have some time to work on Firebolt. So Firebolt should be a little easier because it is a much more traditional bullet compared to a giant falling rock with leftover lava flames. So Firebolt, as we can see here, already has a player hit function. So in theory, it already works for hitting a player if we specify that this is a non-friendly bullet. And it respects the, or it should respect the damage variable. So you would think anyway. But we can see here we even have checks. If friendly, the AoE damage will hurt all targets that are around that are monsters. But if it's non-friendly, it will hurt all player targets. Now, right now, this is actually a circle check, but we actually made one specific to players now, so we should actually be able to just use the same function, but instead supply player as the hurt type. Funny enough. So that's a change that I think we can incorporate. Get rid of some of these to condense. Okay. So I think we're at a point where we can just go ahead and implement the firebolts, like have the monster shoot it out and see what happens. Also, we have to be a little careful because there's a chance that the flame trail enchantment goes off for a monster instead of just the player. As we can see here, it tries to make an effect if the player has this enchant, but what if this isn't the player? So we have to say, is this a friendly bullet? Because if it's not a friendly bullet, it's not from the player. So then we don't run that, right? So we do have to be careful of stuff like this. So I think other than that part, we should be pretty good in terms of using this straight up to shoot a firebolt. So we're going to go back to monster ability, and under our placeholder log for the firebolt, we're now going to shoot out this bullet. So I think we actually have a create bullet function or macro that we use here, and we specify the type, so we're specifying a firebolt. If it doesn't exist, it's because we have to specify or include the bullet header, or bullet types header, I should say. And then we'll have access to firebolt, which will then allow us to create that firebolt. So this macro works by instantiating a new unique pointer, and because it's a macro, we are able to expand the arguments, which is one of the magical things about this, compared to us trying to make our own custom function to condense the standard make unique syntax, which was our goal, and then we realized, oh, but var args does not show up in the IntelliSense prompts, overhead prompts, so then we have to look up what the arguments are for the function every time. That's really annoying. So we found out macros was kind of the solution for that. So that's what we use now. As for what happens, it's going to start at our position. So M lock, or excuse me, we could locally get it, but again, we could just lock, get pause, the velocity. So we have to determine how fast we want it to shoot out. Is there a spec for this? Firebolt deals 100% attack on collision. Should we assume it's pretty much the speed of a player's firebolt? I guess I'll use that for now, or something very close to it. So if we go back to the wizard class and look at the firebolt spell, the bullet speed is determined here. So maybe we'll make a config parameter for the monster that determines the firebolt bullet speed, and for now just set it equal to the wizard's bullet speed. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the wizard's config file. And if we look at ability 3, or excuse me, 2, we can see here is somewhere the bullet speed, right? It's called bullet speed. I don't see it. I must be blind. There it is. So bullet speed set to 275 by default. So over here for Skeleton Fire Mage, we're going to do the same but for Firebolt. Bullet speed. And by default we'll just do 275. Just like a player's. And so we go back here and we specify that as the value. We have to do config float. We just specify it, and then we presume it's in units, so we have to... Do we have to divide it? No, I don't think so, actually. You know what's weird, though? In the player's version of this, we're doing cosine and sine for vel. Why? Oh, it's an actual... Okay, okay. Wait, that's weird. You would think for velocity, I would just say, okay, provide a speed. It will determine the direction. Wow, that's archaic. Fascinating and archaic. Okay. I will do this for now, I guess. But usually we just like to specify angle and velocity, right? Instead of velocity that defines the angle for us. Which is very weird. Okay. It is very strange. So we need the cosine of... So we have to determine what the angle is to the player. So we can do that by doing... Do we determine the angle? Hold on. No, we just provide a... We just provide degrees. So the amount of degrees offset from us to the player... Here we use a tan 2. I really don't like how I did this. This is kind of gross, right? I really don't like how I did that. But I guess we did make a function to say 0.2 or point... It was like get direction or something. No, that's facing direction. So yes, if we want to find out what the angle is, we're going to have to subtract the two y's and x's and do a tan 2 to get a radian version of angle to player. I think we have a util for this. Util, let me pull that up. I think it's called 0.2. I just want to avoid using anything archaic, because this is very old code. I bet we haven't touched this in forever. Like, this is one of the first few classes in the game, so... It was made on January 15th, 2024. Yeah, so you can tell this code is pretty old. More than 2 years old now. So we definitely had a different way of doing things back then. But this util should have like a... I think it's 0.2. Yeah, 0.2, so you can get from and to, and it will return a vector pointing in that direction. So that's kind of what I want to use here because it simplifies things. So we're going to use that, and we point it to the player. Get player. Oops. Get pause. And that is a more, I guess, modern way in terms of our codebase of obtaining the angle to something versus all this mess. And then we just multiply it by our configuration value, whatever we want our velocity to be. So that is firebolt bullet speed. Right there. And I guess I should make sure that this does what I think it does. So yes, it's turning these two into a line, then it's getting the vector of that, and it's normalizing it. And the normalizing part was the part I wanted to make sure of, because we're going to be multiplying it by essentially a magnitude. So it needs to be a normalized vector so that we can do this. Strategy is undefined. That is true. And so is M. M being a weak pointer right now, we're going to have to convert it, kind of like before, and change this argument to be monster instead. such that we don't even have to use the weak pointer anymore. We can just use the reference directly through M, like so. We kind of set it up that way. Maybe in the future we'll make this standard, because it looks like I'm using it in multiple places. So that's a good sign that we might want to actually standardize that, so we don't have to keep copy-pasting it. What else is there to this bullet? So the damage. I think it's just 100%. Let me check. 100% attack on collision. Let's go ahead and write out a thing for that. Configuration. Firebolt damage multiplier is going to be 1.0. And then we can provide that configuration value inside of here. It does strictly say damage, so we have to multiply this by our attack. And then after this is upper level. So we just say on upper level. And whether or not this is friendly, so this is not a friendly bullet. So we say false. And finally, we have to do end bullet. This macro will close out the hidden parentheses that we provide with these macros. Okay, so that will technically shoot out a firebolt if that monster casts it. And hopefully it just works. Hopefully we don't have to do anything else special with that. So we'll see. Time to find out. Because I was looking at the firebolt code and I'm like, other than adding in a check for this friendly flag when it comes to that enchantment, everything else should remain the same in terms of how it executes. It's pretty modular. Like, we did a good job of trying to incorporate the player, even though the player was not getting hit by these bullets. These bullets might have been used later, which is why I probably still did that. Or at least I tried to. Okay, so let's see here. Now, it can still choose to shoot the... Okay, there we go. I want to try getting hit by it? Okay, cool. So it just works. There's not much we have to do in terms of that, so it looks like we got both abilities done for this monster, which is excellent. I'm very happy for that, actually. I want to see if how large the explosion is, if that feels okay or not. Because obviously the explosion itself could feel a little too large, just like the meteor range was. So I want to see that for the player too. Stop! Give me a firebolt, please. Oh. Damn. I just missed it. There we go. Okay. It didn't show the damage number. I want to see the damage amount. It should be the same, but... I wonder if that's a bug. Like, the damage number should pop out even if you die. I wonder if that's a bug. No. Don't give me a rock. Okay. Not what I need. That one didn't hit. Okay. Eventually, you might actually do what I need you to do. No? Oh, it just insta-kills. Why does it insta-kill? Huh, let me see. Okay, it uses the player's attack multiplied by the bullet hit explosion damage multiplier. Well, that might explain the issue, is it's using our attack, but it's using this, which is kind of weird. Also, like, why... There's no damage number, which concerns me. I'll be right back. So, I am gonna have to leave soon, but let's see if we can figure this out real quick. So it uses the player's attack, which is very much not supposed to be a whole bunch of damage. We can see here, if the player's in range for this function, that it would get hurt by damage, but that should get it to display like the damage number. It also does, like, it's kind of weird that this function is the problem here out of everything. So, maybe, let me think. Because on player hit, well, it wouldn't be on player hit, right? Because this is like, this is another thing, completely separate. So it wouldn't trigger this. At least we don't think so. And this might have to be a project for tomorrow. I don't see anything clearly that would be like, oh, that's the reason why we're just insta-dying. Even if I account for the bullet hit explosion damage multiplier, which is 3, I guess that's a pretty big number. If we account for the player's attack and that, I guess that is a pretty big number, right? So maybe that is what's insta one-shotting us, when instead it should just be damage. Like, if we get hit by the explosion, it should just be damage, right? Like, to me, intuitively, that would make sense. So let's see if that fixes anything. Because if we still just get one-shotted, then it's clearly not... It's either not doing damage and just instantly setting our health, or we're getting hit so many times in a row that we're just dead. Period. So I don't know. This is unique. I was not expecting this to be the issue. It's also kind of hard to trigger just because you have to be in the explosion radius when getting hit. And only get hit by the explosion, not the bullet itself. We'll see. If I can get him to do it early, that would be great. Oh. Well, I didn't have my back step, so... Okay, I missed. Okay, that looks correct. So I think we're good to go now. Hopefully. Yeah, it's not insta-killing me now, which is great. That's what we want. Much, much better. I think it was just doing too much damage before, and it was using the player's attack, so obviously, if we get hit by, what's 181 times 3? We just die. It's like over 500 damage. So yeah, that would make sense. Okay, so that implements the firebolt, and now we just have to make the actual AI movements, the movement patterns for the skeleton fire mage next time. Firebolt implemented. I really can't type today. Implemented for skeleton fire mage. Yay! And that's release build. 12426. Yay! So we did a good job today. Got a lot done. Finally implemented the casting system for monsters. And so now it's a matter of making the abilities, filling these in, and testing to make sure they work. We've got 4 more abilities to make, and then we gotta make the AI of the monsters, and then essentially the 3 caster monsters will be done, and we'll be almost done with all the chapter 4 monsters, at least in terms of the AI. We still have to make all the sprite sheets, but that's going to be done by our artist, of course. So I hope you all enjoyed today's coding session, and we'll see you all next time, okay? Thanks for watching. Bye.